Listen, if I'm really honest with you, if I'm really, really honest, I still think Joe Biden has an advantage in the election and could probably pull this thing off because incumbency has advantages. And there are a significant number of Americans who they don't like Joe Biden, but they cannot conceive of voting for Donald Trump. I think it's possible. But I also think that there are a lot of people who think that and just process it as there's no way Donald Trump can win. And actually, right now, Donald Trump is mopping the floor with Joe Biden. And if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win. And there are so many Democrats who can't conceive of the possibility of Donald Trump winning that they're dismissive of anyone who says he can win. And they shouldn't be. It is a fool's errand to think that there's no way Donald Trump can win. He can very well win this election and probably will win this election for this reason. Joe Biden is captured by the progressive base that increasingly alienates Americans. You don't have to believe me, just believe Joe Biden. So he sat down with Jonathan Capehart of the Washington Post, the pro-Hamas Washington Post, I should say, and MSNBC, just to give you a sense of who Jonathan Capehart is. He is a gay progressive, and Eric Holder, who is Barack Obama's attorney general, presided over his wedding. That's how progressive he is. Eric Holder was presided at the wedding for the guy and his boyfriend, now spouse. And Joe Biden likes to sit down with the guy because he gets these softball interviews. And Jonathan Capehart, progressive MSNBC host, was able to softly bully Joe Biden into apologizing for having used the word illegal to refer to Laken Riley's murderer.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
Why do you regret using the word illegal for illegal aliens? This is a word that millions and millions and millions of Americans in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, in Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona, and in Nevada that they use. They are crossing the border illegally. Joe Biden says he should have used the phrase undocumented. Actually, Jose Ibarra, Laken Riley's murderer, was very well documented. We know when he crossed the border. We know where he crossed the border. We know which laws he broke when he got to New York and how the progressives turned a blind eye to it. We know how he broke the law in Georgia, and they did very little to him in Athens, Clark County, Georgia, where they like to think of themselves as a sanctuary city. And we know he ultimately, because of the progressive policies put in place, was able to murder Laken Riley. And we now know Joe Biden is more concerned with using the phrase undocumented than he is with mispronouncing Laken Riley's name, calling her Lincoln Riley. He essentially is willing to apologize to Laken Riley's murderer and not to Laken Riley's family for mispronouncing her name. Of course, Donald Trump on the campaign stage called him out for it.
When I say he was an illegal alien, he was an illegal immigrant, he was an illegal migrant, and he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump.
Look, the reason Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump is because of stuff like that. Donald Trump is going to deservedly mop the floor with Joe Biden if a progressive MSNBC host can softly bully Joe Biden into walking back using the word illegal. Just think about this for a minute. And I know it's hard if you're on the left and you're listening to this right now. You can't fathom this, but a a great vast array of Americans, including Hispanic Americans, use the phrase illegal alien. They haven't gotten into the progressive word games of where they're undocumented Latinxes. They use the word illegal alien. They're not racist. They're not bigots. They're everyday Americans who aren't going to change words to avoid offending the sensibilities of mostly white progressives who use the word Latinx. You know, Jonathan Capehart, I guarantee you, has used the word Latinx unironically. Joe Biden can't win re-election being that captured by the base of the Democratic Party. So Kara Swisher is a progressive. She's on CNN. She started off in technology, and of course now she gets to opine on whatever she wants. And Kara Swisher had this to say on CNN about how Joe Biden should respond to Donald Trump.
If he's going to be shameless, which is his greatest asset, the shamelessness of him, is then Biden has to get in there very hard and go rapist, racist, fascist, over and over and over again. And then the trials are happening at the same time. He's just had to pay, he's just $93 million poorer right now, and just hammer it in with those three things: rapist, racist, fascist.
He's going to lose if he does that. Rapist, racist, fascist. That plays well to progressives. And in fact, in this circle of jerks on CNN, everybody's nodding along. Yes, very seriously. Yes, he should do that. He's going to lose if he does that. He's going to lose because he's not taking on Donald Trump. He's slandering Donald Trump, and progressives will say, no, he's not. He's telling the truth. Americans don't care about that. Americans care about the fact that the border is being overwhelmed, and Joe Biden is more upset about calling an illegal alien than he is the border. Joe Biden is losing because Americans understand the costs of inflation. Americans understand the economic morass that Joe Biden's economy has us in. Americans understand that they're not better off than they were 4 years ago. They feel less safe. They feel less secure financially. They feel less secure in their homes. Do you know in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, police stations will no longer be staffed from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Police will no longer respond to calls for theft and burglary alarms going off. Do you think that's going to help Joe Biden? Do you think it's going to help Joe Biden? I don't think that's going to help Joe Biden at all. And meanwhile, Joe Biden is on television apologizing for using the word illegal alien. There is a vast disconnect between progressives and America. You know, Charles de Gaulle, the French leader, one time commented that there was Paris and there was France. Increasingly in the United States, there are progressives and then there are Americans. Joe Biden being captured by the progressives distances him from the issues that Americans care about. Joe Biden being captured by progressives means he's perpetually in apology mode for saying things Americans say, and then telling those Americans somehow they're bigoted for saying the things that Joe Biden himself just said. And Joe Biden wants to be the big man and apologize for saying the things Americans say. There is a huge disconnect between the left and the United States right now. Look, on the issue of Hamas and Israel, the Biden administration is bending over backwards after their win in Michigan when so many people declared themselves uncommitted. And they're convinced themselves it wasn't the auto workers, it was the pro-Hamas supporters in Dearborn, Michigan that pushed that. The Biden administration scrambling now to come to terms with and convince those people that he's not as pro-Israel as they think he is. All because of a small segment of the population of Democratic voters Joe Biden is concerned about. He's bending over backwards, moving in heaven and earth for a bunch of people who support a bunch of terrorists. And they are a small number of people nationally. I'm fascinated by this, that the Democratic Party has become in such a bubble they can't understand this. Now, Republicans are in danger of being in a bubbles as well. We shouldn't dismiss there are Republican bubbles, and Republicans can refuse to relate. But at the same time, it's the Democrats who are the most out of touch with the American public. A girl was murdered in Athens, Georgia. The mayor of Athens, Georgia, wanted to lecture people on the hateful things Donald Trump said. He's a progressive mayor. Wanted to lecture people on the hateful things Donald Trump said, as opposed to owning the fact that the policies in that county enabled a murderer to murder a girl, an illegal alien no less, murder a girl. The president is more upset at himself for using the word illegal alien than mispronouncing Laken Riley's name on a national stage. The press and progressives have done their best to just treat her death as a statistic and say, well, more legal people murder than illegal people. More legal Americans are murdering people than illegal aliens. There's no problem here. Really, she's dead. That's a problem. On inflation, they said it was transitory. It was transitory. It was transitory. It was transitory. And yet it continued. Now they say it's no big deal and the economy's healing itself when it's not. They say we've had this massive increase in jobs, except it's people taking multiple part-time jobs and the government merging them together to create one full-time job. More Americans are working part-time jobs than full-time jobs than ever before. But in the Democratic bubble, this is all good. In the Democratic bubble, everything's fine. In the Democratic bubble, all is hunky-dory. And if you don't believe it, you're a hateful bigot. And you're ungrateful to the great job Joe Biden has done. And if Joe Biden will just go out and refer to Donald Trump as a rapist fascist, he'll win the election. Life is good in the Democratic bubble. It's real good when all you have to do is say that. Now, this is where we probably need to save this for the See, I Told You So file. Because if Donald Trump does win in November, which is very likely right now, you know who's going to be at fault? They'll blame the Russians, of course. But you know who's really going to be at fault? If Donald Trump wins in November, it's not going to be Joe Biden. They're not going to go after Joe Biden. They're going to go after you. They're going to attack you. They're going to blame you. You'll be the racist, misogynist, hateful bigots who put Donald Trump over the edge. You were more concerned about your family and your 401k than you were democracy. Shame on you, you hateful bigots. You can see this in their tone already. You can hear it in their tone. You can see it on television. They're going to blame you. If Donald Trump wins, it's your fault because you hate America. Progressives can never acknowledge that they and their policies are what's broken and wrong. It's got to be the people, and they would prefer a different people, which is why they're allowing so many to flood across the border, and that is going to cost Joe Biden dearly in November. He's too captured by the progressive base to make a case to the American people for his reelection.